and the momentum of the bike was coming around my leg on the tarmac, and I ended up flipping the bike up over me, and I was able to remount and lost only 10 seconds in the lap time, which was pretty incredible.
That's World Superbike champ Jonathan Rea talking about his weekend at Misano. He's our guest on this week's podcast. Welcome to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg White, and on down the line is our boy, JP. What's up, dude?
G-Dub. Well, I'm sitting in June gloom in California, so it's been like drizzling rain. Really strange where I'm at in Ventura. So, but it's okay. Been doing a lot of riding after Utah, and was at Buttonwillow all last weekend with Let's Ride and all my friends. It's kind of nice, Greg, just being on a bike and not really just being able to go out and ride and have fun, you know?
Yes, I do.
100%. You need to. I'm telling you, man, you need to come out. We had a good time and had a lot of fun people there, and I was with Alex Dumas came out, Toby Kampsuk was out, Gilbert, Caroline. I mean, all like some of the MotoAmerica people that I work with, and
didn't Gilbert post something up about Joey being there, his mechanic, and they worked on some stuff, maybe found some stuff.
They did, yeah. Joey Lombardo came out, and it's so cool having him back at the races. You know, he's working for Michael, and it's nice seeing Joey around, and he's obviously with Kawasaki, and they've given me a really neat kit bike to ride on loan. So I got to actually ride it for the first time at Buttonwillow. I rode it at Chuckwalla a little bit, but I was still hurting pretty bad with my leg. So I got a chance to ride it out at Buttonwillow this weekend, and man, I had so much fun. It's just nice being on a bike. It was fun.
Now, when you say kit bike, is that bike? Joey and I talked about this for years. What a lot of people don't realize is that from Kawasaki actually sells, like race parts that are either theirs or even aftermarket. So is it? I used to call that bike the catalog bike. Yeah. So everything you can order right from Kawasaki, and then he bolts it on, and yeah, that's pretty neat.
It's a ripper. Yeah, it was so fun. Yeah, and at the end of the day, on the second day, I took it out and got to ride with Michael a little bit. And the hardest thing for me is obviously I've got some pretty fast people that I get to ride with, and I ride majority. I just ride my stock ZX10, and this bike's allowing me to go ride with some fast guys, which is really fun for me, and keep on a bike. And we've talked about, I can't golf, I can't do any of that stuff just because my leg won't let me, and but I can ride a motorcycle, which is just ironic in itself, I guess. But it was good. It was hot. It's getting hot out here. I'm going to Willow. I'm going to Big Willow on Friday.
Willow
Springs. I'm going out there on Friday.
I love and hate that place, right?
Yeah, I grew up there.
I do.
Yeah, it's a weird place. Yeah. It's just a strange place, but it's going to be fun. Alex Dumas is going to be out there riding, and they're actually staying here. Him and Francois' father, they're staying here in town in their RV. There's a big, really nice like campground down by the beach, and they've stayed there before, so they're here, and we're going to go out there. I'm going to ride with my friend Wes as well. So yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend, and then I'm up to the Ridge up in Washington right after that. So I'm slammed all the way through like July.
Bastard.
I know.
You stupid. I love that racetrack.
The place is good. It's good. It's great. So I got to
describe the Ridge. Describe the Ridge for people that maybe have never heard about it.
Well, the Ridge up in Washington is a track. It's really funny. It's got the views there are insane. There's big, gigantic redwood trees and things like that all over the place, or pine trees, and the views, I think you can see Mount St. Helens from there. It's getting some infrastructure there now as well. But basically the track is, you go down this big, long front straightaway, and then it winds you up to the top of this hill that they call the Ridge. And you run all along the Ridge, and then you come back down the hill at the end of the lap. It's probably one of my favorite places to go without question.
Yeah, it's like a plateau, like the front straightaway.
Yep.
You're going counterclockwise, front straightaway. Then you take a left and you go up on top of this ridge or like a plateau. And then you kind of race, 90%, maybe, 85% of the track?
Up on top of that ridge, right?
Up on top of the ridge. And the corkscrew thing kind of comes down the hill.
Yep.
And then like a left-hander. It's almost a 180-degree left-hander that leads you onto the straightaway. As I remember, it's been a long time since I've been there, but it's burned in my memory because the track was neat, and the way it was built, it's a computer-generated track, but probably one of my favorite computer generated tracks that I've ever been on. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. And in that place, they're just, they're looking for an event. And, we've heard rumors of MotoAmerica maybe getting a look in up there and having to check some things out. So, it'd be a neat place for us to go. It's another new track that could be put on our calendar. I think it would draw from Vancouver, Canada, down to Seattle, to Portland, all that area would be a big draw, because it's kind of right in the middle of Seattle and Portland. It's probably a couple hours from Portland and maybe an hour plus from Seattle. So, but it's kind of in the middle. I think that it would look great on TV. And I'm going up there I'm going up there for my 4th year now with Moto Vixens. And, I go up there and I do a day where we teach on the Saturday, and then I'm going to do some one-on-ones on Sunday. So, and then from there I go straight down to Laguna. But yeah, it's going to be a fun week. Going to be a fun month. July is going to fly by for me. I haven't really had any weekends off since May. So yeah, it's going to fly by, but I'm looking forward to getting up there. G-Dub, you can always come.
Oh yeah, I was going to say my invitation got lost in the mail. Yeah.
No, your invitation continues to be denied every time you get one. So,
Anyway, speaking of Laguna, little announcement. JP and I will be doing a live video podcast from the MotoAmerica / WorldSBK weekend at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, July 12th at 4:30 p.m. local time. We're going to be broadcasting on MotoAmerica Live Plus app. And later we'll be able to upload it to the Greg's Garage YouTube channel and that type of stuff. So if you don't have the MotoAmerica Live Plus app, go get it. Just go to motoamerica.com and grab the thing. You can do a 1 weekend pass. You can do for the rest of the year. But I mean, there's just hours and hours and hours of content. If you like motorcycle racing, make sure you do that. All right, Jay, you want to just roll right into our first topic of the podcast, which is WorldSBK. All right. So World Superbike happened at Misano over the weekend. And now, for those that maybe haven't been listening to the podcast or watching World Superbike, there's 3 races. There's your normal race 1. There's a shortened Super Pole race. And then there's race number 2. Let's go ahead and go over the results from race number 1, which happens on the Saturday. Jonathan Rea ended up winning that race over Tom Sykes, Alvaro Bautista, Loris Baz, Chaz Davis, Marco Melandri, Cortese, Takahashi on the Moriwaki Althea Honda team finished in 8th. Zanetti in 9th, and then Mercado in 10th. If you're thinking to yourself, wait, what? Well, where's Razgatlioglu? Where's Haslam? Where's Lowe's? It was a wet race. It was a rain race, and it was a red flagged race at one point, Jason. And Alex Lowe's led both of those events and ended up throwing it down the road. So Jonathan Rea went on to a nice victory. What did you think about the first race that they had in the rain? And explain to the listeners why it got red flagged.
Well, I mean, first off, when you see the conditions there, when you watched Misano's right on the coast, Adriatic coast, I believe it is, Greg, and the little town of Rimini is right there, and it's such a beautiful area. And when it's sunny, it's gorgeous. But yeah, race day Saturday looked miserable. Torrential rains, really. I mean, it was really torrential rains. But I think that there's a few things that I looked at in that race that really changed the dynamic of the championship a little bit. I feel like it could have changed it even greater had some of the results stood the way they were looking, because Johnny Rea and Alex really did have the pace on everybody in the wet, as far as they'd pulled out quite the gap on everyone at that first start. They had kind of checked out. Alex ended up tipping off in a really fast right-hander off the back straightaway there that's incredibly quick. And then we saw a couple other guys, I believe Pirro did the same. Rinaldi did the same in the same spots, I believe, that are, I mean, really, really fast. But what was interesting is at the time, Sykes was pretty solid where he was at, but there was a lot of things going on behind, and Bautista had fallen back as far as 5th or 6th, I think, at one time. So he was fortunate and did a great job of getting himself back up into 3rd, but it really could have changed the championship had everybody kind of stayed on. There would have been a much bigger, points swing at the front. But yeah, the race got red flagged just because of the weather. The weather it got so bad that, I think it was puddling, and it was it just got too hard to ride.
Yeah, it was like torrential downpours.
Torrential, yeah. Yep.
It was really even difficult to see, even if you were all by yourself. I mean, at least from the camera angle, it looked pretty brutal. So
yeah, and I think that they did a warm up lap or whatever, and they pulled in right away because it was just coming down too sideways, and but Jonathan Rea, I think that for a lot of us, the way the championship had been going, we're a little worried. When that championship point lead got out to 60. I think everybody was a bit worried. Batista's been riding amazing this year, obviously, doing a great job on that new Ducati. These are the kind of weekends, though, that can change things, and now it puts a little bit of pressure on. So with him winning and Batista ending up third in that first race, there was obviously the gap got a little bit closer, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. The one thing about Bautista, though, and that Aruba.it Ducati that he's racing, that was actually their first go in the rain at a race. So pretty good lap times that he was able to, eventually get down to, all that kind of stuff. But
it's so hard to tell in a wet race, though, Greg, because the conditions change so much that he could be putting in those good lap times when it's getting a little drier, or not drier, but maybe not as torrential. But I agree with you. First time on the bike, kind of, in the wet, wet race. I know they had conditions in Assen, and they had some conditions at some other places as well. But yeah, and when you look at it, there were guys like Razgatioglu and Haslam and Alex that were at one point all ahead of Batista, and they ended up falling out. I think it was nice to see Sykes get the maiden podium. Do you know how long it's been since BMW's been on a podium? Did you see this press release on how long it's been?
6 years. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was 9.
I thought it was 6. Was it 9?
Yeah. Anyways, it just doesn't seem like it's been that long, does it? But yeah, it's good to see Sykes do well. It was weird to see Reiderberger really nowhere to be found at all this weekend.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
He was really nowhere to be seen. So
I think Tom Sykes is on some of the best form I've seen him on. What he's really suffering with is just an engine right now. I mean, they're just getting blown away on the straightaways, but in the corners, the BMW's chassis is working fantastic, and I think Tom's riding really well.
Yep, and he was only, at the end of the day, he was only 3.6 back from Johnny there in that first race. So it was. I'm sure that when they put their heads on a pillow that night, Saturday night, knowing that you've kind of closed that championship down a little bit, you've kind of continuously heard Ray talk about how he's just going to, he's got to chip away at it. He's got to just keep doing what he's doing and riding hard and in control and getting results. And, I'm sure there was a little bit of boost that night when they went to bed.
I'm sure there was. So then they went to bed, then they wake up the next day and the sun is shining.
It was perfect, and it's just typical, one of those kind of days that you like there. And when you look at the Super Pole race, there, Batista ends up winning it by 7.2 over Alex Lowe's, then Haslam, then Razgatioglu. Johnny Rea finishes 5th, and we'll get to that in a second. That kind of led into our soundbite this morning. It was the most incredible thing ever. But
I swear,
Melandri, Rinaldi, Pirro 8th, Mercado 9th, Zanetti, which I thought he rode really well this whole weekend. He's on Eugene's Go 11 team. He ends up 10th. Torres, Baz, Reiderberger, Takahashi, and Kianari rounded out the points on the Hondas. When you look at this race, Batista, he won it, and honestly, Greg, looked super determined to come back and make up for what had happened the day before. Johnny Rea was running a pretty easy second, and then he makes this mistake, and the tightest right-hander on the track, and it did something I've never ever seen anybody do. Like, it's weird that we can still see that after all these years we watch racing, but he actually falls, kind of holds onto the bike, and as the bike's tumbling, it kind of flips over the top of him, but he never lets go of it. Now, this is all happening very slow, mind you, but he kind of never lets go of the bike, and the onboard camera was almost comical watching how he was able to just jump back up, pick the bike up, and go.
I mean, like, he was on his back, and the wheels were in the air, like the bike
in the air
flipped over the top of him, like he just kind of, I don't know, like threw it off of him, and it went right back. It was such a weird crash.
Until you see it, it's kind of hard to even imagine. But what's incredible about it was the battle that was going on for fifth, just behind, the leaders. It was at that point, it was Bautista leading. Johnny was second. Lowe's and Haslam were real close. I can't remember who was third at that point, but it was either one of those two, and then there was Gattiaglu. Then it was a little gap back to Melandri. Well, Johnny picked the bike up. I mean, never let go of it. Kind of the bike flips over the top of him. He picks the bike up, gets going. Melandri goes by him, and then he passes him back and races to fifth, all the way to the end of the race there. And when you look at the last lap, Sykes was actually in that podium spot as well. He breaks on the last lap. So he goes from, another podium spot on the BMW, which was kind of heartbreaking to see, but he ends up going from another podium spot to not finishing. And that jumps Jonathan Rea from sixth up to fifth. But Bautista, if you watch that race, it's the first time all year, Greg, that I've seen Bautista almost like it was almost like he was overriding it. Like it was really showing his talent on that race because the bike didn't look like it was handling very well. He didn't look as comfortable as we have seen him look. He was out of the seat a lot, and he did I thought he did a pretty amazing job, winning that race.
Yeah, and he was so fast. I mean, his qualifying time, when you put a qualifier on, it's a 135.144, and he did a 135.169 in that race. And
unbelievable.
Yeah, when you hear later on Johnny Rea explain it, he'll talk about the speed, just the absolute raw speed of that Ducati with Bautista on it. But 10
because
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, we get it's like you hear people talking to us and about how we talk about the Ducati, but you can't when you see a guy just roll right past somebody on a straightaway, you can't really just like deny the obvious fact that the Ducati is fast. It just is. I mean, Zanetti went by Torres this weekend like Torres was tied to a pole, like literally. And I know when another Ducati, this and that, we do get the comments all the time about nobody else is really doing anything on a Ducati and this, but it doesn't really matter. It just takes one guy, and Bautista's that guy. He's riding amazing, take zero away from him. But the outright straightaway speed and acceleration is incredible on the Ducati. It just is. There's no denying that. And the second race there, the Super Pole race, you could tell that Johnny had just he was riding awful hard, but he'd settled to the idea that he's not going to catch him. Bautista would pulled 3 seconds on him. He only had 10 laps to try to make that up. And at that point, all you can do is kind of keep trying to apply the pressure. And he tipped over. He fell over and still salvaged fifth.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a series that is not shying away from the fact that they try to make equipment as equal as they can, by making rules, doing rules in a certain way, it's hard to ignore a bike that is noticeably faster. I mean, when you look at top speeds recorded, only Ducati, with the exception of one bike, only in qualifying, only Ducatis reached over 270 kilometers an hour. The only other non-Ducati to make it was Haslam at a 270.0. Mm-hmm. So everybody else was in the 260s,
Yeah.
So you look at Bautista, 276. You look at Rinaldi on a V4R, 273. Pirro, 272. Chaz Davis, 271.4. Everyone else is in the 260s. So, there's factors involved in that, of course, which is going to be, yes, you have a lot of motor. Are you getting the traction to the ground? How much information is being shared across garages in terms of traction control strategies and those types of things, and what tire choice? But nonetheless, that's why we keep bringing it up, because it was such, I think, a shock at the beginning of the year for us to see the outright speed of that Ducati V4R versus the rest of them. And it's not that the field, Jay, I think you would agree with me, not the field is bellyache and saying they need to slow those bikes down. What the rest of the field is doing is trying to figure out how to catch up to the Ducati, because it is what it is at this point.
No, it's exactly what it is at this point. And there's nothing you can really do about it. And the fact that, if you look in the BSB right now, I believe Ducatis are 1, 2, 3 with Bridewell and Josh Brooks and Redding, I believe. Tommy Bridewell's leading over there in BSB. So the Ducatis are having success other places. Obviously, we're hoping that Kyle can get his bike going over here as well. But when you look at some of the other Ducati riders, Chaz ends up fifth in the first race. And then in this Super Pole race, he tipped off. So he was out of the points in 17th, even though he remounted and got finished. But you look back and Rinaldi was 7th. Pirro was 8th. Pirro, a guy who spends a lot of time, I still think he's got the coolest job in the industry, testing MotoGP bikes, testing super bikes. They're back there quite a ways back, but you can't take anything away from it. It sucks because I don't want to take anything away from Alvaro because he's obviously riding well, but it was the first time all year that I watched him and I thought, wow, that thing's not working. It's when I say it's not working, he's riding it really hard. Like he almost looked like, I have to win this race. I have to get away. I have to get some points back that I lost yesterday. And he just looked determined to do so. But it was the first time I've seen him kind of look a little bit out of shape, in some spots all year long. So he was definitely putting it down.
Speaking of that, when we went on to race 2, which is our third race of the weekend, later on in the afternoon on Sunday, track temperature was the highest it had been all weekend. The outside temperature, the ambient temperature, the highest it had been all weekend. So heat playing a bit of a factor for a lot of riders. But the way that race unfolded, you had Bautista, who ended up passing for the lead, and on the second lap ended up tossing it away. And he picked the bike up and he finished 14th, so he got himself 2 points. But that handed I don't want to say it handed the race win over to Jonathan Rea because hardly, because he had a ding dong battle with Razgatlioglu, the Turkish rider on the Pedercini or Puchetti, in the Puchetti Racing ZX10R, which I believe is a full factory bike.
Yep.
And then you had Leon Haslam, who wrapped up the podium. So Kawasaki went 1, 2, 3. Lowe's was in 4th. Rinaldi in 5th. So Rinaldi was our first Ducati.
And rode, it's the best I've seen him ride all year. I mean, he was only 7.1 back, and he was, what was he, Greg? Only a couple, not even a second. I don't think he was off of 1.2 seconds out of a podium. And he was coming. He was riding hard, obviously.
Yep. You had Sykes in 6th, Davis in 7th, Pirro in 8th, Zanetti in 9th, Torres in 10th, Reiterberger, Baz, Cavalieri in 13th, Bautista, and then Cortese. Melandri fell off, and he got up and finished 16th, and then Kiyonari in 17th. Mercado, Takahashi, and Del Bianco, your non-finishers in that one. So a couple things to note. Number one, Jason, is going to be, I think, when Bautista fell off, he lost one of his wings. Eugene Laverty has said that when he crashed the bike earlier in the season and he lost one of the wings, that it became unrideable. Mm-hmm. If you go look at the lap times of Bautista after he fell off the bike, his lap times were pretty consistent with what the leaders were doing.
Yep.
But I don't know if you noticed or not, when they would go back and show him, that thing looked like Jake Lewis's Superbike from last year. Every time he opened the throttle, it would just wheelie, 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 wheelie. Yep. And what you have to understand is that those wings that they have on, and that's stock. You have to run those because your bike has to mimic what the stock bodywork looks like.
Yep.
So those winglets create, at a certain speed, 70 pounds of downforce. So just hang a 70-pound weight off the front of your bike. So you have a couple things working. Number one, the front end of the motorcycle is designed to take it at that speed. Secondly, though, and more importantly, I think, is the electronics at that speed, the amount of power that's delivered. So obviously, or not obviously, but I wonder if Ducati is going to look at what happened, look at the data, look at the wheelie control, Jay, and go, okay, here's the thing. We're going to add a crash map, to the strategies that we have, that's going to be able to deal with having one wing or no wings on the front in case you crash this thing and can pick it up and keep going. I don't really think, though, that it affected Bautista's finishing position, because if you go back and look at those lap times, I mean, he was pretty well in the mid to low 37s, which was what Jonathan Rea and Razgatlioglu were doing towards the end of that race. The second thing, obviously, is the race up front was phenomenal.
It was. I think there's a lot of turning points. I think the only way that Bautista could really lose this championship is by doing what he's done. And now we've seen it 2 races in a row where he crashed it in Jerez, and he's crashed now at Misano as well. Those are just handing points back. Those are just giving those points back to the lead that he had got at the beginning of the year. I think as the season goes, that pressure kind of mounts. And now we're reading about the, kind of getting re-signed again in World Superbike. I don't see Bautista ever going back to MotoGP, even though that's kind of the talking point of, he wants to get back there. There's just too many people in line for those seats. So for me, I look at it and think, well, now's the time where we're going to see how pressure gets handled and so on. Johnny Rea ends up winning that race, as you say, but I don't know if he was expecting the big push that he was getting from Riscatiaglio. And I promise you there were some tense moments in the pit area or in some of those garages when Toprak was, getting the rear wheel off the ground up underneath Johnny in some places. I can't imagine what would have happened had he skittled them both. But you cannot take anything away from Toprak. He went by guys at the beginning of the race. I mean, he passed Haslam, he passed Johnny. He was going forward. He was trying to win the race. And even when Ray got by with 3 or 4 to go, he was still determined that he felt he could win. You heard him in the post-race interviews talking about how good his bike was under braking. He's a little bit, I'd say he's a little bit up and down as Toprak. One weekend he's 8th, and then the next weekend this weekend was obviously his best I've ever seen him, finishing second as close as he was. But those last few laps were pretty intense, just from my couch watching, seeing how it was going to unfold, knowing that there are 25 points on the table. It would have been interesting as had Toprak got into Johnny. But it was, they're racing at the front. That's what you like to see.
We'll hear from Jonathan more about that a little bit later on, but
I'm sure.
I'll just go back to the point about Bautista. It's now getting out there in the news that Honda is going after Bautista for World Superbike. You kind of touched on it, and I think really when you look at that, Jay, it goes to a couple of things. The fact that HRC and Moriwaki have partnered to bring in this Althea Honda team on the old CBR 1000RR to get their feet wet this year. I think it's obviously a year of shitty results for those guys, but it gets them in the championship. It gets them to understand how everything works, tire allocation, tire development, where you sit. And I think that if Honda's really going after Bautista, then that means that they're telling him about this brand new motorcycle that they have out. So, we don't know much about it yet, but we do know that there's a new 1000cc Superbike coming. I hear that it's already running around at the Suzuka 8-hour tests, is what I've heard, and that they might debut it at the Suzuka 8-hour. So, you can't be the Moriwaki Althea Honda team or HRC and go to Bautista and go, we want you on our team with our current setup, because Bautista would be foolish to walk away from the Ducati at this point. But if they have promises of a brand new bike and they break out the checkbook, then it shows you that Honda's finally tired of getting their asses whipped in World Superbike. But Jay, the thing to keep in mind is this, before you go on, the thing to keep in mind about World Superbike is this. When you look across the manufacturers, BMW, only World Superbike, but are they really in it seriously? I don't know. They come and go. Every couple of years they're in, every couple of years they're out, kind of a thing. You have Ducati that's utilizing resources from the Corsa department in MotoGP. You have Yamaha utilizing resources in MotoGP. You have Honda utilizing resources in MotoGP. What you don't have is Kawasaki. Kawasaki's 100% focused factory team, blah, 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 everything is in World Superbike. And when you look at how quickly they responded to the rules change from last year to this year and got that new ZX10RR out, it makes me really think what Kawasaki has coming down the pipe and how quickly they're going to respond again to what Ducati brought to the table this time. And I don't think Ducati has got the flexibility to change again. This was the V4R was not an overnight solution. The V4R has been something that's coming down the pipe for the last couple of years. Yeah. And this is what they have. So what's going to happen this offseason to this championship is going to be very interesting to me. And what these teams are going to do and what Bautista does will determine, I think, how the championship is perceived.
Well, it's exciting and it's scary at the same point, because I think the costs are going to go up with the new bikes. It'll be interesting to see how the public reacts to that, because again, it all goes back to kind of bike sales. I believe that, when you talk about the Honda Bautista thing, the thing that I would be most interested to know is, this is really, we're going to see how much Ducati wants Bautista to stay around, because as we've documented, nobody's been able to ride the bike like him. nobody's been able to get up there and do anything really on the Ducati other than Bautista. Boy, if they lose him, who do they put on that bike? I'm sure that there's some people that they're looking at already in case that was to happen. But if there are new bikes, like we've heard from Yamaha and Honda, obviously, even Cowie, that there are some things that are going to be updated or new equipment. It could be the boost that the championship needs. Maybe we'll see some more seats become available. With Bautista and the Honda thing, you got to think that if he really wants to get back to MotoGP, that they can dangle a couple carrots in front of him. Obviously, Crutchlow's on a factory Honda, essentially over there, and there are some other bikes Honda could provide him to go to MotoGP again, as there are with Ducati. I just think the Ducati has already filled those seats, kind of thing. With who they've got. They've got Miller and Bagnaia still, Dovi and Petrucci, and then people in the pipeline. You already heard Alex Marquez linked in with Pramac and things. I just feel that there'll be some underlying things that Bautista would maybe look for to jump ship over to Honda and get away from a package that he knows is already winning. So it'll be interesting to see how this offseason goes for sure. But even more so, as we finish this season out, it'll be interesting to see how the championship unfolds, Greg, because now we've only got, 16 points now between the two guys at the front that are dominating the championship, Bautista and Rea. And, real quickly, we have to mention Michael Vandermark's huge crash. He's still third in the championship. Yeah. But did you see the crash?
God.
Oh, it was so violent,
It's not the biggest high side I ever saw, but it was one of the fastest I've seen. Reminded me of violent. You know what it reminded me of? Turn 5 at Laguna with Lorenzo years ago. Like that kind of real quick snap, like it was gone. And man, how he didn't have like a collapsed lung or broken ribs or whatever.
Yeah, was really happy and good to see. It's funny, Greg, because I've been off the social media kick now for a better part of a couple of weeks, but I get on Twitter every now and then. But I saw that he's doing well, and they flew him home privately, and he's got a broken wrist that they fixed, and it won't be long. And I know Alex Lowe's, who's fourth in the championship, and Haslam, and probably even Johnny Rea. They've all been over in Suzuka doing their testing. So this might have been Vandermark's way of getting out of having to go do all that testing,
yeah. But didn't he win both races at Donington last year, which is their next stop? So that would be the trade off, right? Go to a track.
That's the bummer part for him.
Yeah.
He's been riding great.
So I had a chance to talk to Jonathan Rea. Obviously, you heard at the top of the show, we got on the horn and had a little bit of a chit chat. So I asked him about his weekend.
Pretty solid, actually. Of course, from a championship point of view, with Alvaro making the mistake in race 2, kind of opened things right up again. But we had a test in Misano a few weeks ago, and everything was really good there. Although the race conditions, it was so much hotter. We've really hit the height of summer here now, and race 1, you couldn't write the script. Just the heavens opened, and it was super wet. And I made the silly calculation of not going out in FP3 in the morning because we knew that the rain wasn't going to come, but we didn't actually, because 1 hour before the race, the heavens opened. So whilst I kept my nice dry rhythm and was able to make the Super Pole, I was super nervous before race 1, but it was a pretty cool one because I just settled into a really good rhythm that I was happy with, not making mistakes. And when Alex came past, I had a bit of the devil and the angel, telling me to try and go with him and go after him. And then after a few moments, and aquaplane moments, I decided just to ride my race. And then when he went down, it kind of gave me that gap to win. So it was nice to get that win and start the weekend off good. And the Super Pole race, going into the Super Pole race, I really believed that I could win. My pace all weekend was around about Alvaro and ahead of everyone else, and I felt like I could ride at the intensity needed to keep with him and his bike for the 10 laps. And it was the first time this year I used that Super Pole tire that Pirelli brought. So I was gagging for it, but the lights went out and I got the whole shot. And then lo and behold, he came past me into turn 1, I think, on the following lap, and then on the exit of T6 to down to turn 8, he completely blasted me, and it just killed my motivation. I realized that there and then that it was going to be super impossible to compete. Barring any mistakes. I was taking huge liberties in the corners, and then just getting blasted by 0.3, 0.4 in that middle sector. Just anyway, I kept doing my thing. Cortese was like quite close behind me, and then I made a bonehead mistake. 2 to go in turn 10, exit the back straight. The front just folded, but instinctively I held on to the thing, and it was digging around my leg. I don't know why, but I had this instinct just to hold on, and then I was starting to get slow, and the momentum of the bike was coming around my leg on the tarmac, and I ended up flipping the bike up over me, and I was able to remount and lost only 10 seconds in the lap time, which was pretty incredible. So nice recovery job to finish 5th in that, and then the last race was it was pretty nice race with Top Rack. After seeing Alvaro go down on lap 2, I think I just sort of it was a bit of a rabbit in the headlights for a few laps, and then I got my head down and chased back onto Top Rack, and he rode a pretty solid race. He chose a different rear tire to us, but I just kept trying to hang in there, and I could see that he was on the same struggle bus that I was with the front tire, and just plotted my move and managed to get it done. It was a cool race, to be fair. When riding with a bike that evenly matched, it was more about kind of race tactics, and you could afford to take a step back. And I think in the super, super hot conditions, when there isn't that grip to be so fast, the lap times were almost a second slower than the Super Pole race, a second slower and more, to be fair. It was just a different way of riding. So, I enjoyed that race because it was close and kept me on my toes to the last lap.
Couple things about that, Jay. Number one, you're spot on in some of your comments. Obviously, Johnny confirmed that. Number two, a rabbit in the headlights. So I don't think they have deer in Northern Ireland. So obviously, that's like one of our things. Standing there like a deer in the headlights. As he goes, a rabbit in the headlight. I'm listening to him going, "Oh yeah. That makes a lot of sense." But what'd you get from his synopsis of his weekend?
Well, it's for me, Greg. I sit there and I think about all the different types of emotions that the guy has gone through this year, because being a 4-time champ and then knowing that he's going to have a big test this year with Bautista from day one at Phillip Island when they race there. When you hear a guy like him say that he lost motivation when the bike when Bautista went by him, it's just such an honest, it's just him being honest. I think people overread into so many things, but when you are riding at the level that these guys ride at, and you see something like what Bautista's on do what it does, and it goes by you. And look, Johnny's had a really great bike for the last 3-4 years, winning championships, and we've heard people talk about, his bike's so much better. You take advantage of what you have on the day, and right now Bautista's bike is fast in a straight line, and he rides amazing, right? So he's taking advantage of that. The lost motivation, you could almost see it, because when I'm watching TV, you can tell body language, and I've seen a lot of these guys ride over the edges and things, and I've seen Johnny do that over time, and he never manages to fall over. It seems like he just keeps the bike upright. This mistake he made is one that you and I talk about all the time. We always see the mistakes in the slow corners, always. I mean, think about Catalunya just a week ago at the MotoGP. All the crashes were happening in slow turns.
In the slow turn.
yeah, exactly. And I think that he had kind of thought to himself, all right, I'm going to end up second. That's just that's not being a defeatist or having the defeatist attitude. That's reality. When you have something that just isn't quite up to snuff with what's beating you, you got to just take what you can get. And then he makes a mistake. What I thought was funny about that is when he said he's only 10 seconds slower in the lap that he crashed in, how many track day riders are going to be going to Misano now and thinking to themselves, I got to at least go as fast as Johnny Rea does when he crashes in a lap, And
they won't be able to do it.
And they won't be able to do it. No. And the thing is that then the next race, just a few hours later, they're lining up for race 2, and he sees Bautista go down, and then there's probably another rush of adrenaline, emotion that goes through of like, oh my gosh, like he's the points leader's fallen again. And I think that, and I don't want to think for him, okay, but you got to think that when Bautista goes down, Rea automatically is putting 25 points in the bank in his brain. He's like, oh, this is going to be mine. And then he gets this incredible ride by Toprak all of a sudden, who's just going to battle him all the way to the finish. I think it's almost better because it keeps your concentration and your focus level up. And yeah, you'd like to have one of those races. It's really easy to say it's fun to win races by 6 seconds and not be challenged. But on the flip side of it, sometimes those races can be harder than if you're fully engaged against somebody. And he was. And I think it kept his focus up, it kept his concentration levels up. Toprak rode amazing. But at the end of the day, he put 25 points in the bank.
Yeah, I did. And, we've seen moments of brilliance from Toprak Razgatliago in the past, but, this was Ray's opportunity, I think, to really get a good long look at how the Turkish rider rides. And I asked him what he thought about Toprak's race 2 performance.
He's such a good guy. I'm a big fan of Toprak. When he first went on Superbike a few years ago in a Portimao test, I towed him around all day and tried to help get him up to speed, which I'm probably kicking myself now for. But he is a good guy. And last year I seen flash of brilliance in race 1 or 2 at Donington when he came from nowhere. Van der Mark won both them races at Donington, but Toprak 2 or 3 more laps and Toprak would have won. He was coming like a train, and I seen it there. There's a couple other tracks, so he's been showing flashes of brilliance. It's I don't want to say inconsistent, but when he's on, he's really on, and working on a few other things, I'm sure, especially riding in the wet and some other areas and tracks. He's going to be there. He's still super young and he's growing every year. So he just needs to make that step now to be a consistent front guy. Watching him from behind, he doesn't put a foot wrong. He does everything right. I didn't feel under pressure because I was sat behind and the race was kind of slow and the grip was terrible. But I seen his pit board the whole race. It was +0 and he wasn't running wide. He wasn't making mistakes. So he had it pretty under control. So fair play.
Well, yeah, Greg, I think that the thing, when you look at that, when you just hear what Johnny says, the inconsistency, I think, is what Toprak's got to battle right now. One weekend he's up front, next weekend he's back. I think for a young rider to finish second and be as close as he was, that's going to really lend itself well for the upcoming races, especially like Johnny said, last year Van der Mark goes 1-1 at Donington. That's where they're headed next, and Toprak was coming. It's going to give him a lot of confidence. I think qualifying is another major thing. If he starts up front, it definitely will help him because he gets to see that speed right off the bat. But for sure, he's a talent. He was the same way, though, Greg, in 1000 Superstock. He was one weekend he'd be right there, and the next weekend he'd be 5th and 6th.
Mm. Well, we'll have to see, how it ends up because some riders do make the step and some riders don't. But he did some things on the motorcycle on the ZX10 in that race too that I thought were pretty incredible, especially the way he was entering. It was late, some of the late corners, a right-hander. He just had the thing like almost completely at full lean angle and was still on the brake, sliding the thing around. And I thought, wow, this dude's got a tremendous amount of talent. So it's a good thing we're starting to figure out his name because he's going to be a rider we're going to be talking about for a long time,
No question. Question. He was pretty amazing to watch.
Yeah. The next question I asked Jonathan Rea was, so what's coming up? What's the near future look like?
Well, we got pretty much 2 races before our summer break. 3 for me. I've got Suzuka 8 hours, but I've got Donington Laguna back to back, which is going to be nice. Just try and get through like mistake free and try to be on the box in all 6 of them races. Of course, Donington's a track that our Kawasaki's really strong at. Last year, I had a 2nd and a 3rd behind Van der Mark and then Toprak. So let's see. I feel good about Laguna. It's a track that should suit our bike. It's going to be hot, which should suit us. And let's see. Keep an open mind. Of course, it's a weird mentality. In the last 4 years when it's been not easy, but you turn up to the race weekend knowing that you pretty much have a legitimate shot of going out and trying to win some races. And this year the reference has changed, so that underdog feeling's pretty cool. And to sort of it's gone from 61 points, in the championship at Jerez race 2 to 16 now. He doesn't have the momentum anymore that he had at the start of the year, but he's still got the outright speed and pace. So let's see. Just try and keep my head down and do the best I can do and work with Kawasaki. I mean, we really need to make a step. We're getting closer to the mid part of the season when decisions are made for next year and whatnot. So just keep trying to work with Kawi and get something good happening for next year as well. And let's see. But we're back in the game, and I feel good about the next 3-4 circuits coming up. Portimao and and also Magnicur after the summer break. Should be good as well. So just race by race, mate. Take it as I come. Forgive the noise in the background. I'm kind of on holidays here in Italy, so a lot of crazy Italian kids that just fallen out here on the volleyball court.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like he's somewhere having a good time, which is outstanding. I think that the thing I pull from that quote there, Greg, is that he's already looking ahead. And as I look ahead at these rounds, he says exactly what I feel. Yeah, Johnny has the momentum. Bautista no longer has it, but he's got the equipment under him. It really is going to fall onto Bautista's shoulders at this point. We know he's a world champion, and we know what a class rider he is. It's going to really be up to Johnny and the other riders to put pressure on Bautista. The thing that's concerning for me is when you look at the remaining 4 rounds after the summer break that you heard him talk about. They go to England now, and then Laguna, obviously, and then the Suzuka 8-hour. If he's able to close those points down, he's got Portugal, which Ducati and them have tested at, which has a tremendously long front straightaway. I think that will be. I was there last year. Ray rode amazing. I think it'll be close. Magny-Cours, I'm a little concerned about because, again, a lot of grunt. You're going to have to disrupt Bautista's rhythm there quite a bit. I think Argentina will be good for Johnny and the others. But the last round, I really feel that something's got to happen in these, Portugal, French rounds, even Argentina, to really go into Doha, because I think the Ducati is going to have a pretty big advantage at Doha. So if it comes down to the final race of the year, it's just going to be a matter of Bautista, I really feel, not making the mistakes because he does have the bike to win. And if Kawasaki can help Leon Haslam and Johnny Rea and Toprak and them, they can get that bike a little better. That's what they're going to have to do.
Very interesting. Yep. Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, thanks, Johnny, for being a guest of ours on the show. Greg, we also had a pretty gnarly, exciting World Supersport race. I don't know if you got to watch that one. I'm sure you did.
Oh, yeah.
Randy Krummenacher takes the win over Kira Casulo, and the last lap was, we always talk about World Supersport coming into this year, not really being on the radar, kind of boring. Not this year. It's been really exciting. And even though it's kind of been the same guys, watching that race, Krummenacher and Kira Casulo, they might as well have been wearing different leathers because they were hammering on each other, not like teammates, but they seemed to be getting on okay. Very close finish. Right behind them, Lucas Mayas, former World Supersport champion, ends up third on the Pacetti Kawasaki. It was nice to see him up there. Clazel, Okubo, Gabellini, uncharacteristically just a little bit further back in sixth. And then we had Sumer, Manfredi. Thomas Gradingers, who I was actually thinking about finishing ninth. He was the one I thought on the Callio Racing was a little bit further back. Massimo Roccoli finishes 10th. Fuligny is 11th. Ottaviani, 12th. Crescent, Danilo, and Casati are rounding out top 15. Couple non-points guys that we see up front a lot. De Rosa ended up crashing on the MV Agusta. Close race. Really
Good race. And
yep.
I was really surprised after this one. So there's the famous shot, Jay, that came out on social media, a video shot of Krummenacher and Casulo on the last lap coming out of one of the corners and just literally throwing elbows at each other. And
yeah.
And I thought it was, going to be a little bit more heated in Winner's Circle. Like the interviews I thought would be a little bit more like blah, blah, blah. But they were like, hey, that was a good race. Hey, teammates, blah, blah, blah. So Krummenacher wins that race by 84 hundredths of a second over Kira Casulo. And that I think allowed the Kawasaki of Lucas Mayas to get in the mix. He was 1/10. Because of their fight. But Jay, one of the things that I found very interesting is how incredibly, how determined Krummenacher. I've seen Krummenacher race before, plenty of years. He's been around a long time. But man, did you see the last series of corners, those last right-handers?
Oh yeah.
I wish I knew Misano better in that direction. I know it the other direction a lot better because I've ridden it before, but in that direction, I don't remember the series of corners, but they were kind of side by side going in there, and Krummenacher just ran it in on the edge of the tire, like at full lean angle on the brakes. Thing was moving around. And I just think that was really the biggest move, was just he was so tight in that last series of right-handers. I was like, he's going down, and he pulled it off. And to me, that was really the defining moment of that race win. It was, if you're not watching World Supersport and you like racing, you got to find it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Caricasulo passed him going down into turn 8. And I, when I watched it back, even when they come out of turn 6, Caricasulo makes a little bit of a mistake, but he was able to gather it up a little bit in 7 and go down the long chute down towards turn 8 and got up underneath Krummenacher, made a nice clean pass, and actually opened up a little bit of a gap. And when they went down the back straightaway out of turn 10, they went down that back straightaway into what I believe is 11, 12, and then 13 is where the right-hander tightens up, Greg. So you got kind of a succession of fast rights, and Krummenacher went underneath him. Caricasulo cut it back, and the whole time I'm thinking, all right, Caricasulo is going to run him out to the curb, which he did, and Krummenacher didn't give up, and they were locked in elbows. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, Mias is loving this because he might just see these two guys take each other out. The thing I love most about the whole thing was that we didn't see any like race controls investigating. It's like we didn't see any of that. They let these two guys race. They raced hard. It's the last lap. It's 3 corners from the end. We're rubbing elbows. We're teammates. There's a championship on the line, and they just rode hard. They raced hard. And for the majority of the race, there was 5 to 7 bikes up in that front lead group, and then really the last sort of 4 or 5 laps, the group started getting broken apart, and Mias was really the only one that could go with him on the Cowie. He's still a little bit underperformed as far as bike to bike goes. The Cowie just doesn't look like it can quite accelerate as good as the Yamahas in some spots. Watching that race back, but I agree with you. If you love racing, the super sport stuff this year has been pretty incredible to watch.
And Sumer, who finished 7th, 14.8 seconds back on a Honda CBR 600 RR. Like at this point, I'm looking at Sumer going, I wonder if someone puts him on a Yamaha, what this kid can do at this point. So
yeah, there's no question, Greg. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that when you say that, it's just, we know how old the old Honda is, and it's good to see that there's. I mean, I'm happy that they're still I'm happy that they're still in the paddock, but
me too.
Yeah, come on, we need to see. I'd love to see a new Honda CBR 600.
Yeah, definitely. All right, to the best race of the weekend, right? I think. I mean, in terms of
pretty good.
All right, so we're gonna move on to World Supersport 300. Now, Jason, in World Supersport 300, it was Ana Carrasco, the reigning world champ, the number 1 plate. She ends up winning by 0.8 of a second over Gonzalez, your championship points leader. And then, I mean, there's just a bunch of names that we could go through on this stuff that most people haven't heard of before. But let's see. We're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bikes that retired. 7 of those on the first lap, which...
Oh, my gosh. That first lap
was a yard sale. 100% yard sale. Try to describe it. Yes. I mean, it was a good start. And then next thing you know...
They got through the corners I thought they'd get through, or the corners I thought they'd have issues with. Turn 1 and 2 there, especially with that big of a field, you kind of look at it and you think, all right, there's going to be a couple here or there that are going to get skittled out. But they got to turn 7, and one of the guys kind of high-sided himself out as what it would be 6, and his bike kind of went down the track, and most of the people missed it except for the very, very tail enders.
Yeah.
So that wiped out, it was like 4 guys right there. And then the run down to turn 8, we lost another one. And then when we got over to turn the fast right-handers off the back straightaway, we lost like 3 more. And then we lost another couple in the tight right. I mean, it was just, and I'm thinking, okay, red flags got to come out. But, no red flags. Corner workers did a good job getting everybody off the track. And other than that, though, from that point on, the race at the front was just insane.
It was insane. It ended up being... I don't know how to pronounce it. Verdoia, I think is the pronunciation. Harada, Pratama, Steeman, like they were all right there. Vocino, all within 1.6. But what ended up happening was you had Ana Carrasco, who, she was leading, then she'd get roughed up and go back, and boom, 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 it's going back and forth. You had 2 Kawasaki's, Yamaha YZF R3s, that were able to do the speed, and the KTM RC390R, which It's interesting because we have the same rules as Super Sport 300, but yet we don't have any R3s that can keep up with our ninjas at the moment. And maybe that's just due to rider setup, track time, who knows? But it was such a great race. And the thing was, for me, Anna Carrasco was fast, and she got passed and she repassed in a variety of ways. She didn't just draft and pass. She's small, obviously, but she also did it on the brakes, and she did it trying to drive out. She did it in a variety of ways to get back up front. But ultimately, I think she had a plan to lead on the last lap, and her doing so allowed the scrap for second place between four riders to rough themselves up. And they just, if they closed down a 10th, they would rough each other up and she would get another 10th. And eventually that turned into 0.8 of a second and a very, very well-deserved, I think, race win for Carrasco.
You know, I'm not in that paddock all the time, as you know, Greg. I go over there a couple times a year if I can. And last year when I went to Portugal, I went to France. And when I was in France, I heard a lot of the murmurs that we heard about our championship over here last year, that when we became a multi-bike championship rather than just the KTM 390 Cup, there was obviously some rules that needed to be adjusted and stuff throughout the course of the year. And I heard some murmurs about Anna's bike, and you know, she won a couple of races last year, really going away. Imola comes to mind, where she just kind of smoked everybody. Donington, the same. And I think that there was a lot of people that were talking about, oh, you know, it wouldn't have happened, but she was on the Cowie, and Cowie kind of got the jump. And I think when you look at her this year, right now running second in the points, it really validates how great she really is as a rider in this class specifically, because I think it's a lot like you and I talk about Moto 3. I think on the day, there's 12 or 15 guys that can win in Moto 3. It's just a matter of making it through the race, all the laps, and keeping your nose somewhat clean to give yourself a chance to win. These races are kind of the same way. She got shuffled back to 5th and 6th at one point and kind of found her way, making her way back forward. And you're right, she ran the absolute perfect last lap, and she won this race. And Greg, she's got a non-finish this year. Manuel Gonzalez, take nothing away from him. He's been incredible. And he's got quite a big point lead on things as it sits right now. But she's moved herself up into second. I think they got 4 rounds to go. And in this class, anything can happen, but it's going to give her a lot of confidence winning that race the way she did. Especially, I would say that there's not really a track that is like a big drafting track. Yeah, down the back straightaway they can, but it's not a track that has 2 or 3 or 4 big long straightaways, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was well impressed with it. And you could tell by all the Kawasaki team and everybody that came out to her after the result, you could tell everybody was very, very happy for her.
Speaking of that, Jay, the Kawasaki team came out, all that you're talking about. So Jonathan Rea was there also at the end and gave her a big hug and had some water for her. She got pulled away. But so when I had him on the phone, I asked Jonathan Rea, about Anna and, how does he have a direct line to Anna Carrasco?
Well, last year, Anna was riding for David Salam's team. I'm not exactly, it's like the DS racing team, whatever. And quickly after a few races, my team stepped in and kind of really supported her. So I feel like even last year when she was world champion, that there was that connection to the KRT team, the official team. Whilst officially Kawasaki don't, support any one team in Super Sport 300, my team manager pretty much looks after that team, and she's based in Barcelona now with my team. So I really feel like a close connection there. And last year, it was clear that, in some races she had a good speed advantage. I don't know, being so light and figuring out the regulations. But, this year she's made such a step as a rider as well, and the confidence and the way she rides. And that's super good because now everything's so even. It's the best. I'm not scared to say this because I'm a superbike guy, but it is the best race of the weekend every single weekend. There's a lot about luck. Of course, you need to try and make your own strategies, but you got to be in the right place at the right time. She got hoovered up in Assen just by 2 corners to go. She stuck her nose in the wind just a little bit too late, and she got taken down in Aragon. But more or less, she's regularly there along with Gonzalez. I really rate that kid as well. He's there every weekend in that fight for the lead, and it looks like he's got a very calm head on his shoulders. And you can tell in that class during the weekend that there's Anna and there's Manuel Gonzalez, and they're out there in practice, riding themselves, setting the lap time themselves. They're not constantly looking for toes and whatnot. And it's I love watching that class. So it's always nice when she's a teammate. When she wins, it's super cool.
And Jason, just to support what he was saying, if you look at the top speeds in that race, Carrasco had a 179.1, Gonzalez had a 77.6, but there are a host of other riders, including Yamaha R3s, that are well in the 180s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the kind of top speeds or whatever that we've seen in the past.
Yeah,
he is right. It is more even, and it's exactly what you said. And I know that you don't have any idea what Jonathan's going to say until you hear it live right now. So it's it always cracks me up when you guys are in a line talking basically the same thing,
Well, I would never compare myself to Johnny, obviously, but I've been there a little bit and I've watched a lot of things. And the thing I think I really loved what he said there was, that Gonzalez and Anna get on with their weekends. They don't screw about with always looking to get toes or always they're in it to try to get a good solid setup. I agree with him. I think it is the best racing of the weekend because it is so close and you're at your edge of your seat the whole time and I always think it's fun. Like I said before, when you can just follow one or two people and you see them go back and they bring their way forward. And what he talked about with Carrasco at Assen and even at Aragon, it goes back to what I said prior to listening to Johnny's quote was it's so hard to keep your nose clean. It's so hard to keep yourself out of the window of getting yourself into those positions where somebody can either take you out or you lose a little time. And it's such a fine line for those two, specifically Gonzalez, to be as consistent as he is and do what he's doing and have as big of a point lead. It really says something about him. And same with Anna. She's up to second in the points now. And no, I think that the last 4 rounds will be interesting, but she's just had that. She's had that one race, Greg, where she didn't score any points at Aragon. And that's coming back to get her a little bit now. So she's going to have to put a few wins together and hope that Gonzalez, she knows that she can get people between him and her. So there's still a chance that could happen. So
yep. And to wrap that up.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, there's only 4 rounds left in that championship.
Correct.
So the total amount of points is 100 available. And Gonzalez has a 43-point lead over Anna Carrasco and Scott DeRue. He's also there. And then back to Garcia, who's 58 points back. So on paper, you would have to say that it looks like it's just a runaway for Gonzalez, but you never know with 4 rounds to go. Super Sport
momentum, man.
Yeah, momentum. And it's such close racing, anything can happen, even though they've raced relatively clean all year. Yep.
Yeah, and I think that right now, when you look at all those championships, we would have definitely not thought that the 300 would be the one with the biggest points gap, but it is right now between the 3 that we've talked about this morning. And we'll be rolling on to Donington, a place where Anna won last year, and going in there with a lot of confidence. So we'll see how she goes. Greg, this weekend, MotoGP, going back to the Cathedral of Speed.
Oh, yeah.
Last time we were there was World Superbike, and it was snowing. So,
good point. Got a feeling it's not going to snow this time for MotoGP.
I feel you're right. I feel like you're pretty right. But we've seen some amazing races there. Last year, obviously, Vinales and Marquez clashed a bit, got together, always for some really close racing. Assen's just one of those places, Greg. When you go there, you can feel the history when you kind of pull into the place. It's a pretty amazing spot. Are you ready for it?
I am ready for it. I'm looking forward to it because Assen can give us some real great racing and some big surprises. It always seems like it's that kind of deal. Also, we have seen a lot of rain in the past at Assen. So if it rains, I'm not saying I want a rain race, but I'm just thinking to myself, we
haven't had a flag to flag this year, have we? We haven't had one of them like kind of starts dry. Guys got to come in, get on their dry setups, blah, blah, blah. We haven't seen one of those, have we?
No, we haven't seen one of those.
Could happen. You know what I always think about with Assen? I don't know. I always think about this with Assen because I know we've seen like Rossi cut the chicane with Marquez and we've seen all that stuff. I always think about Nicky and Colin running 1-2.
Me too.
Colin leading, coming out of the chicane, flicking himself, and Nicky winning. It was like Colin was that close to winning a Grand Prix. He was that close,
You were that close to winning a super sport race at Vegas too, Jay.
And nobody cares. Yeah, nobody cares.
Weren't you that close to winning a World Supersport race too at Laguna years ago? Anyway,
thank you.
Who am I to bring up the past? Go right ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
Shit, Greg. Not very nice. Not nice. Anyways, yeah, I think I always love watching Assen, and it's such a fast flowing. It's such a gnarly track. You'd never been to that one, right?
No, I have not.
Yeah, but I think going back to Assen, it's always great racing. So I think, and with the championship where it's at right now, some people got to make some big moves to catch up to Marquez.
Yeah, both of them actually, right? So we'll have to see how it goes in Assen.
Can Marquez win his fifth or fourth straight? Would it be fourth in the Moto2 class?
It would be fourth. Yeah, it'd be fourth straight win.
Amazing.
All that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm thinking. So Mark Marquez won his 48th race the last time out. So
Wow.
He's only sixth now behind Doohan, who's got 54. Agostini's got 68, and Valentino has 89. That's premier class win. So he'd leapfrog past Jorge, and I don't know. It's so impressive what Marquez is doing, but I want to see some closer racing. I think people probably need to just stay on the track for the first few laps and see how it sorts itself out.
Yeah, great advice, Greg. I think too the problem that they're going to have is, I believe I'm not positive, Greg. So I believe it's like a 37-point lead now, and it frees him up, doesn't it? It almost like frees him up a little bit. I think that they're going to get into a lot of trouble if they let the championship get much bigger. Not because they're going to lose the championship, but because I think it frees Marquez up to where he feels like, I've already thrown one race down the road this year, and I've still got a 37-point lead. I mean, he literally
point,
is just
it?
Yeah.
I mean, that is because if he gets 50 points or more with the amount of racing we have left, then what does he care if he tosses one down the road?
Doesn't.
He generally doesn't high side, so most of the stuff he does is on the low end, and he just kind of skids along the track, picks himself up, and he doesn't really get hurt that often. So I don't know.
No. You're right. You're 100% right. And there's going to be some guys that are going to be coming after him, and obviously the Ducatis are going to be strong again. I think that last year, I believe it was last year, Petrucci almost won this race. So it's going to be a great weekend again in Assen. I'm looking forward to watching it. I think I'm actually thinking I might be home on Sunday to watch all of it. So,
well, predict a winner then. Who do you think? Give me a name. Who do you think is going to win?
Marquez.
Quattararo. Watch it.
Wow, that's
Quattararo.
You know what? I actually do like that pick, Greg. I'm impressed with you. So, anyways, well, this last weekend we had some pro moto results, didn't we, Greg? From at the WW Ranch in Florida. I don't know if you watched it, but it was so hot there. It was pretty gnarly. But Marvin Muscan goes 1-3 to take the overall. Tomac goes 7-1. Again, I think they made some clutch adjustments for Tomac in the second race. He complained about the start he got in the first one was so bad that they made some adjustments and some things to the bike, and he was kind of amazing in the second round. Took over the points lead. Your boy, who I was really impressed with, Zach Johnson, dude, he is the real deal. Like
Zach Osborne.
I'm sorry. What did I just say? Jack Johnson? Zach Johnson, by the way, is a golfer, so I apologize. What a moron. Zach Osborne. Dude, he is going to be a gnarly threat, not only for the rest of this year in outdoor moto, but I think all next year in both Supercross and outdoor moto. So I'm making an early prediction on him real quick because he's the only one that was even able to keep pace towards the end of that race. It was hot, humid, nasty, and he wasn't letting Tomac out of his sights. He went through Muscan, he went through Roxon, he went through Anderson, all these guys that kind of looked like they were trying to go with Tomac early. Which was really impressive. In the 250s, Justin Cooper finally got his first overall, going 2-2 for his first national win. Cian Cirillo in this particular weekend just basically said he just didn't have it. He said he didn't really have a flow on the track and so on.
I think that surprised a lot of people too. By the way, I think people thought it was a foregone conclusion. We're going to Florida, we're going to sandy tracks. It's going to be hot. Cian Cirillo, boom, done deal. And most people gave it away, and so I think it was a bit of a surprise, for some folks that Cian Cirillo didn't just do what people thought he was going to do. But he still salvaged third, didn't he?
Salvaged third, was his normal self. Those two guys outrode me today. Going to come back at the next round, try to do better. It was a really weird trip. Like when I say that, watching that race, watching outdoors like I do, you always talk about, Greg, about computer generated racetracks, when we talk about road racing, and you said it even earlier about the Ridge. And then there are certain places that you go like Road America and some of those places where it wasn't a computer generated place. to me, the Florida track almost looked like a computer generated track as opposed to going to somewhere like Washougal or places that have been around the series for a number of years. And, but it just looked hot. It looked nasty. The track, dude, those guys are so gnarly with the ruts and stuff that developed during those races. It was pretty fun to watch the whole weekend.
Yeah, and the Coombs family who owns Pro Motocross, Lucas Oil Pro Motocross, I wonder if Carrie and Davey are thinking to themselves right now, maybe we should rethink Florida in June. I mean, obviously, with the way the industry is, they've got to start the series in California. It's kind of like the tradition, and it gets the series pumped, and it's 2 weeks after Supercross ends and all that kind of stuff. But oof. June
there was a couple years ago, though, Greg. There was like 2 years ago, I think it was. Two, maybe 3, but I think it was like 2 to 3 years ago. They had this insane heat wave that was just every time these guys were lining up. It was, I mean, I think in Texas they actually shortened the races because it was just that gnarly. But pro motocross guys are at another level when it comes to fitness and when it comes to just just your body being drained. Tomac looked amazing after that race. He didn't even look like he'd been working, and everybody else was pretty well sacked out. And but Tomac looked the business.
All right, Jay, now it's time to move on to our quick shift segment presented by ARAI. Hey, Jay, did you know that ARAI helmets are lined with an antimicrobial material? Yep, the interior liner gives you odor resistance, dirt resistance, and those antimicrobials that you love so much. You can stay fresher longer and enjoy a comfortable ride in the latest ARAI helmet. Now that sweaty season is here. Go check out ARAIAmericas.com, pick what you like, and then head down to your local dealer for fitment and grab a new lid, ARAIAmericas.com. All right, quick one on this one, Jay. I'll ask you a question, 60 seconds. You'll hear that, and then we stop talking and move on. Right. All right, so Jay, so Texan Ben Spies, who's 3-time AMA Superbike champ, World Superbike champ, a MotoGP race winner, paid a visit to Misano last week in World Superbike, and people were asking him about a comeback. And Spies hinted that some endurance races would be great to do, but we know that his shoulder's not 100%, blah, 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 blah. He's mouthing off about MotoAmerica, this and that. What do you make of all of it with this Ben Spies character?
Don't we kind of hear about this like once a year?
Kind of. Yeah, I guess we do, don't we?
Yeah, I just think it's to the point where it's just, Ben shows up at a race, and obviously there's going to be some scuttlebutt about him coming back and riding it. Just because the guy shows up to watch a race and see some old friends, I don't think that conversation should continuously come up. When he talks about endurance racing, if there's one thing that's gnarly on your body parts, it's that. So if he's got a bad shoulder, I don't know if endurance racing would be the greatest for him, although he rides motocross and he's doing a lot of the off-road stuff, and that's got to be pretty gnarly as well. So, but yeah, until I see him throw a leg over a bike, it just doesn't really matter. The guy was amazing when he was riding, but he's not getting any younger, is he? So, yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I think it's tough when you are out of the sport for so long, and I've seen it a lot with racers, who have a fantasy that they can still go as fast as they once were. And I'm not saying Ben can't, but injuries got him out of the sport, and I don't know, whatever.
It's a lot different world now though than it was when Ben was riding over here specifically, and even across the world. It's just a lot different. Greg, in MotoGP, rookie Pecco Bagnaia, he has struggled, which is really unusual because he went fast in some preseason tests, as we've seen some of these guys. He's got 4 crashes in a row. He's had more crashes this year than in the past 3. You'd think it's a disaster, but in an interview on MotoGP.com, Pecco said, "I'm happy now I'm struggling." What do you think about that?
Well, I get where he's coming from. I saw that interview. I get where he's coming from. Basically, what he's saying is that he's the type of person who gets rewarded from the struggle. So when it does get better, it's more rewarding to him that he has had to work through it. But I really like him. I haven't met him personally. I mean, hi, how you doing kind of thing. But yeah, I like his interviews. I think he's got his head on straight. I think crashing in 4 races, though, Jason, 4 races in a row, you're not getting laps at race pace. So I'm concerned for Pecco that he's so far behind the 8 ball that when he does actually have a race and get a result and figure out his speed versus his talent level versus how much grip the bike has and all that kind of stuff, that it's going to be a little bit too late. So, I think for Pecco, I mean, I like the
It's almost
quote, though. I do like the quote.
I do, but it's almost like a Tito Rabat thing, right? We saw Tito win the Moto2 World Championship, and he's never really been there. And you kind of, it's you don't want Pecco to turn into one of those guys. It's just, there. I expected more from him myself. There's a photo of him this week that's incredible, where literally his whole body's on the ground. Like his whole body is off the bike so far. And you kind of think there's nobody else that I've seen a picture like that. Nobody. And he's crashing a lot. There's just got to be something that he's obviously doing that's a little bit different. And you definitely would like to see him get some finishes, because he's kind of like that guy that sits in the top 10 a little bit, and then he has accidents. So let's hope he turns it around.
Let's hope he does turn around. All right, Jay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Your boy Alex Loathe shot over to Suzuka 8-hour test on a Yamaha. They posted the Tech 21 colors, like a robin's egg, if you will, like a watered down Carolina blue or something. Do you like the new livery and the leather combination, or are you disgusted? Go.
I love the colors. I thought the colors looked amazing. I think he's got a Kenny Roberts helmet in the photo that I saw, him and Nagasuga, and Vandermark should be there with them. It'll be interesting to see if he's healthy enough. I think that what's he got, like 6 weeks into the 8-hour? Man, the 8-hour is so grueling, Greg. So it'll be interesting to see. But I know that Yamaha has won the last 3 or 4 years. Vandermark's, I believe, won it 4 times. Alex won it 3 times.
Should be an easy bike to pick up, though.
Kawasaki's
should be an easy bike to pick
him
up on the track. I mean, it's a unique color, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, it looks great. It looks really, really awesome. So I think it'll be interesting. All right, Greg, I got one for you. Just to end this thing, I got one for you. So this weekend I watched World Superbike, and I couldn't help but notice Michele Pirro kind of back there racing against some guys that we would normally maybe think that he should be ahead of. But we're always hearing the MotoGP comparisons of riders to this or that. I found it ironic that in MotoGP, we can see Pirro sometimes circulating up in the top 5, 6 riders, but in MotoGP, in World Superbike this weekend, he was back there cruising around in 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th place. What did you take of that?
I know what you're going for, man.
Come on, G-Dub.
What you're doing is proving once again, that it's not just MotoGP doesn't just have the best riders, that there's great riders across all series. And I agree with you 100%. So what I got from that was, obviously, if you have their test rider who's watching the A rider on the team check out and finish 18 seconds ahead of you, but you're able to get 4th in MotoGP, I'm just saying, okay, whatever. We've talked about this with Jonathan Rea. You've talked about it ad nauseum. MotoGP, just because you're in that series doesn't mean you are a paddock of 24 or this year 22 of the best riders. Then you have everyone else down here. It's impossible. It doesn't exist. There are great riders across all series here in the States, All Japan Road Race, British Superbike, you name it. There are great riders across the board, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm a big Michele Pirro fan, by the way. I really like the guy. Like how he conducts himself. He's Italian Superbike champion, I believe, and a few times. And I just thought it was funny. I just thought, he rode along with the Barney Racing team this weekend with Rinaldi. It looked like it stepped up Rinaldi's results too. So, anyways.
Good time.
All right, Greg, you go forward,
so
G-Dub.
It's race calendar time, so go out. There you go. You go out and watch racing people this weekend. MotoGP obviously is in Assen. Pro Moto shoots up the 95 to Southwick, Massachusetts. American Flat Track in Lima, Ohio. Pea gravel time. BSB visits Knock Hill. Ever been to that place, Jason?
No, I don't really have a desire, to be honest. But the guys that ride over there say it's great, so I'll take their word for it and sit at home and watch it.
Sounds good to me. I'm going to do the same. All right. Until next time, we'll talk to you later. Bye, Jason.
See ya.